You're good. You're good.
Is that big enough?
Looks good. Looks
Right
good,
then.
Pastor.
Yeah.
That's me. That was me when I was a little bit slimmer than I am now. But never mind, it's still me. Got some blessings, and we're going to move on into it. Right then, so you've got your workbook. You can follow through on your workbook. When we talk about the things, you write the answers down in your workbook and do what you've got to do that to get it checked off by a club director or however the process is working. So, question number 1 is this. Describe the proper type of pigeon house. Pigeon houses are called lofts, or pigeon coops, or pigeon sheds, or pigeon huts. But the most popular term for them are pigeon lofts. I think Americans call them pigeon coops, but here in Europe we call them pigeon lofts. I'm going to show you a picture of different types of pigeon houses. Okay, here we go. Okay, no, not quite yet. A little bit of theory. Houses for pigeons are generally called lofts. Pigeon houses are also sometimes referred to as coops, but that's more American, I think. Okay. I need to move that down because that is in the way. Bear with me a second. There we go. So let's go back. Learning how to use Zoom. Houses for pigeons are generally called lofts. Pigeon houses are also sometimes referred to as coops, although the word seems to have originally applied to the breeding pens inside the housing. There are many different kinds of pigeon houses, all right, and they're all different sizes, shapes, colors, and there's no real one design. You can have any design you want, but you've got to have some basics inside them though. But the house can look anything you want it to look, as fancy as you want or as plain as you want. So let's have a look at some of those. This is a very basic one, and if you haven't got much money, this is where you want to start with. You can convert a rabbit hutch or a guinea pig hutch. But this is as small as you want to make it, no smaller than this. You can see that it's got a couple of perches in there, and there's a little hole. It's called a trap for the pigeon to go in, but it can't get out. That's a very simple one, and that's where I'm encouraging you, if you want to do this, to start from converted rabbit hutch, something like that, or you can build it from scratch. It's very easy for dads to build it, but in the days where both men and women are doing everything, the mum can build it as well. So that's a very basic one. Now these are a little bit more elaborate here. So you've got some very expensive looking things like little bungalows, and so right on the bottom right you'll see quite a long shed. That's somebody who's invested a lot of money into their pigeons. They've got a huge pigeon house, and inside that house you've got probably 6 or 7 different compartments. And then up to the top right, that's like an ornate pigeon house somebody's made. You can see different sizes. You can see in the middle left, someone's just converted a typical garden shed, and they're keeping pigeons in a typical garden shed. I used to have a couple of pigeons. I used to have 3 pigeon lofts together in one allotment. My pigeon lofts were about the size of the one on the bottom left. I had 3 pigeon houses about the same size as the one on the bottom left in one allotment when I was at the height of my pigeon activities, but not anymore. Too busy now. So there's just an example of pigeon houses, all different shapes, sizes, designs. But that's there only if you really get into it quite heavily. And yeah, but that's for another day, another time, maybe another life. Now you've heard of doves. These are dovecots. You've sometimes seen these maybe driving through the countryside in some gardens. White doves. Well, doves are just basically pigeons, white pigeons. They're called doves, and so you've got all different designs of dovecots, and you just put them in your garden, put a pair of doves in there, and they'll live there forevermore. So there's a different type of dovecots that you see around. There's one on the side of a church there as well. And next slide, these are medieval pigeon lofts or dovecots. Back in the dark ages, the medieval times in the UK, pigeon keeping was very popular because it was pigeon post back then. I'll talk a little bit more about the use of pigeons in history. So these are typical medieval pigeon houses going back to the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century here in the UK. And you can see these dotted around sometimes. I've seen quite a few on my travels preaching around the country, and I've been driving, and you can see these in towns and villages, side of the roads now and again. And you might wonder what they are. They're not overgrown beehives, they're pigeon lofts or pigeon coops. Right, we're going to talk a little bit about what you need for pigeons inside the pigeon loft. There's a number of equipments that you need, very basic equipments that you need inside the pigeon loft. And here we go, right? You need, first of all, food containers and water containers. You need equipment for feeding them. So the containers are easy to fill, and there's something called automatic waterers, or automatic feeders. If you're going away on holiday, you need these automatic ones. I'm going to show you some pictures what they look like. And here we go. So these are like little mini, if you like, little mini pagodas with holes in the side. And the grey ones you can either fill with seed or you can fill with water. And the ceilings or the roof keeps the bits of muck and dirt and dust out. And the pigeons, when they're thirsty, they just go in there, pop their head in and have a good drink as that's filled with water. And the blue ones with the white containers, they're automatic water feeders. So you fill up the water container and you put it in there. And as the pigeon drinks, the water will go down and down and down and down and down. I think that's, one of them is a 10 litre and one of them might be a 15 litre drinker. They're called drinkers. And if you're going on holiday for a few days or for a week, that's what you need to have so that they can have their water every day. Okay, these are the feeders now. So the wooden feeders on the left-hand side, you put the seeds in there, your corn, your maize in there, and then they'll clear that up for the day. If you're going away on holiday, the red and plastic container there is an automatic feeder. So you fill it up with your seed and your corn and your pigeon food, and as they peck out the bottom, it will go down and down and down and down and down, and it will take a week or so for that to go. So they are automatic pigeon feeders. So you don't have to be going in there every minute of every day. The pigeons are very happy if they can be left alone and be at peace. You put these in and you feed them through those automatic feeders. The other ones, the wooden ones, you have to feed them every day in there because they'll quickly polish that off, depending on how many pigeons you've got, or doves. So that's a little bit about feeding. So you've got automatic feeders, then you've got daily feeders. You've got automatic waterers, and you've got daily waterers as well. Right, now we're going to talk about the pigeon loft design, the pigeon house design for pigeons as well. So we're going to move on. Many pigeon fanciers, a pigeon fancier is the name for somebody who fancies pigeons. Not that they're in love with them, they don't kiss them or cuddle them, but they like pigeons as you like goldfish, you like dogs. You know, instead of being called a goldfish fancier, you're called a pigeon fancier. So a pigeon fancier would build a pigeon loft with at least 2 pens, minimum of 2 pens. That's 2 sections, 2 compartments to separate the birds for different reasons. This allows a few positive outcomes for the pigeon fancier. One, or number A, letter A, they are able to separate their males from their females in order to control breeding, because the pigeons will very quickly mate up, find a partner, and as soon as they found a partner, they'll even build a nest on the ground and lay eggs if you don't keep them separated. But if you want to put them together, fine. You'll have to control the breeding, but that's to keep them separated, males and females. And that's an example of how a typical loft might look inside, with partitions in. So you might have your males in one section, your females in another section, you keep them separate, and your breeding pairs in a third section. So ideally you want 3 sections in a loft for your breeding pairs, your males, and your females. That's minimum, and that's a typical loft from the inside. That's how mine used to look like, a bit like that. We'll skip that one. There's nothing on that slide. Interesting. So the second reason for having different compartments is to separate the young birds from the mated birds. I've covered that. So you've got other compartments for your young birds, for your male birds, your female birds, and a separate one for your breeding pair birds as well. So you've got different compartments for your young, your older male, your older female, and also your breeders as well. So write that down in your workbook.
Master, just before you carry on, sorry, there's something that's popping up on the screen. It's that orange box. I don't know if you can see it. Is there another window open? Is there something on top of the screen you're sharing?
I don't know.
Or if you can just move your cursor down off the screen. I don't know if that helps at all.
I've never used them before. Oops, what's happened there? It says
something you can
sharing. So you see the toolbar across the bottom. I'm screen sharing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Please move this window.
Can you drag and drop that off the shared screen?
It's not letting me move it.
Okay. Well, maybe if your cursor stays off.
Yeah, I'll take that
the screen.
off.
Hopefully that'll help it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
Yeah. Back up again. Oh, that's somebody in the waiting room. It says, please move this window away from the shared application. I don't know what that is. Shall I just carry on?
Yeah,
sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So most pigeon fanciers have at least 2 pens for their pigeons, and often you'll encounter pigeon fanciers with more than 2 pens. Yep, that's very true. Or possibly multiple pigeon lofts. That is very true. I had 3 at one go. Extra pens allow for keeping of spare unmated females, males, which can be useful to replace existing pigeons which might die from disease or from predation. There are times, and I've lost quite a number of pigeons to sparrowhawks. They tend to like pigeon pie for dinner. So you do tend to lose birds, can be quite regular during the breeding season, which is the springtime. You can have sparrowhawks hovering around and taking pigeons every day. And also cats as well. So we have to, look after our pigeons quite well. So yeah, number of pens there for your different needs. We move on. Right, because it can be difficult to determine the sex of a young pigeon. This is true, when pigeons are young, you don't know if they're male or female until they get old enough to make a noise. Once they get old enough to make a noise, to start cooing, or racket-a-cooing, we call it, racket-a-cooing. Only male pigeons racket-a-coo. It's a funny sound thing. It's a funny sounding noise. It's like racket-a-coo, racket-a-coo, racket-a-coo. Only males do that. Until they start sounding those noises, you don't know if it's male or a female. And males generally tend to get a bigger crop, but the birds could be 6-12 months old before they start showing signs of what sex they are. So extra pens are handy for once you've identified male and females. Now we move on. So that's a pigeon loft that looked a bit like mine. You had sliding doors at the front. You had a little alleyway inside with 2 or 3 pens inside. And those sticks pointing up on the roof, like picket fences, those little sticks on the roof pointing up, they're there for a reason. They're there to stop the pigeons landing on the roof. Because if you're racing pigeons, you want the pigeons to fly straight inside the pigeon loft. So you can catch it and you can log the time it arrives at the pigeon loft. You don't want pigeons sitting on the roof for minutes. So they're there to stop the pigeons resting on the roof to go straight inside the pigeon house upon arrival from a flight. That's if you're racing them. So that's a typical pigeon loft there. That's how mine used to look like. And I built them myself as well. That was back in the days. Well, we won't go there. Right, moving on. Right, how do you catch a pigeon coming in then? How do pigeons go in and out of the pigeon house? There's different ways that you can do that. The trap or landing board, I've got some pictures coming soon. For those pigeon fanciers that fly their pigeons, all pigeons not all pigeon fanciers allow their pigeons to fly freely outside of their aviary, but the pigeons need a means of entering the loft. A trap, or at least bobs, and I'm going to show you some pictures of traps and bobs. It's just another name for a doorway. And landing boards allow the pigeons to get back into the house when they're ready to do so. I'm going to show you some pictures of traps coming up in a bit. There are different variations of traps and bobs used. Racing pigeons are commonly trapped home using a bob-wired trapping arrangement. The birds push against the bob wires to gain access, but they can't get back out. They're restricted by getting back out by the design. I want to show you in just a minute. So they can get in, but they can't get out. You see there, the wires will only move one way. So the door will only open one way. That's coming in, and the pigeons can't get back out. So when the pigeon comes back from a race, it wants to get back inside as quick as possible to get a drink, get some food, and get a rest. It'll fly in, and once it's in, it can't get back out. And that's a typical entrance for most pigeon lofts. And that's called a bob or a trap. There's another design, and that's coming up in just a little second. Another form of trap, typically called a Sputnik trap. This uses openings set on an angle which are just wide enough for the pigeon to get access and to drop into the loft. But the pigeons can't get out, but they can drop in, but they can't get out. I'm going to show you how it's designed. There we go. I've got 3 pictures there for you. So the pigeons will jump in through the holes on the angled section. They will jump down and get in, but they can't get back out. By the design, they just can't get back up, fly and get their wings through there. That's called a Sputnik trap. I've never used one of them personally. I've used the wire bobbed method to get them in rather than a Sputnik. So that's the other option that you need to understand for the Honour. So there we go, we move on. Fly pens. This is just another name for an aviary. A lot of pigeon fanciers like to have an aviary or a fly pen attached to their loft. Sometimes pigeon fanciers cannot allow their birds complete liberty. They can't fly. Maybe they're fancy pigeon breeds. There are some pigeon breeds that can't fly because they've been designed not to fly. It's a strange thing. I'm going to show you some pictures later. And so they can't get out, but they need some fresh air. They need some exercise. So you're going to have an aviary for the pigeons to get a bit of exercise and to protect them also from sparrowhawks and peregrine falcons and such like. So they have to have health, exercise. I want to show you some pictures in a little while. So most fanciers, including those that let their birds fly, will build a large enclosed area free of obstacles. You're going to see some pictures there, you see. So the pigeons, although safe and they're housed from predators, they can still get a certain amount of exercise by having an open and free aviary to fly in. So there we go. That's some aviaries, pictures of aviaries. Nest boxes now. Pigeon fanciers will often provide their mated pairs with nest boxes in which to build their nests. Because pigeons are quite territorial about their nesting areas, pigeons coexist much more harmoniously when they have their own nest area. Pigeons will fight. They just like to fight each other. If you have a pair of pigeons and they're nesting, and another pigeon goes anywhere near that nest, there's going to be a whole lot of noise and a big fight. So what you try to do is separate them. So there's some pictures of how different pigeon fanciers have designed a way to separate their pairing birds, their nesting birds. So you can have little cages that they fly in and out of, or they can have their own little perches with a nesting ball in there. But you notice they've all got little bowls, the little terracotta nesting bowls or plastic nesting bowls, and the pigeons will be very happy to lay a couple of eggs in there and sit on them, so like ready-made nests for them. And that's how you can breed your pigeons. And they will stick to their area, and they won't go in anybody else's area, any of the birds' area. They'll stick to their own nest, and they'll all be happy living like that. So that's nesting pigeons, breeding pigeons. Perches. Pigeons need to perch on something. They don't like to be on the floor. They like to be high at height. So you need to build some perches. There's different designs of perches as well. So we'll go straight to the perches. And there's some pictures of different types of pigeon perches. You can have them boxed off with their own little perch. And it's very interesting. It's like Seventh-day Adventists. You know, as children, when you grow up to become teenagers and adults, you have your favorite chair in church. You have your favorite row. And you have your favorite seat in that favorite row. Pigeons are just like Seventh-day Adventists. They'll have their favorite perch, and they'll like that perch. And if somebody else is on that perch, they'll fight over that perch. But the pigeons like their own perches. So you've got to put plenty of perches up for them to roost, and they'll happily sit there all night long and through the day until you let them out. So there's some examples of pigeon perches. Now, the honour talks about special type of pigeon coops or pigeon lofts from Scotland. They're really ugly looking things. They're called ducots up there, but they're really pretty ugly. And I could not imagine ever using one of them, but I'm not Scottish. So I'm going to show you a picture. They're called ducots, and that's referenced in your honour. And you'll see them put up anywhere, and you're going to have a number of pigeon fanciers from the council housing estate or from a nearby estate, and they'll be renting a section of that little ducot, big ducot. They'll be renting a section of the local council. Some of your parents might be renting allotments. Well, they'll be renting a section of the local council. It's called a ducot. A strange looking thing. Now we're going to talk about feeding the pigeons. What do you feed pigeons? You don't feed them bread. Bread's not good for them. So we need to know how to feed our pigeons and what type of food. So we're going to go through and have a look at this. Most pigeon fanciers use commercial mixes. That means mixes that you can buy. You can buy big bags of pigeon food from pet shops. You can buy them from farms. Lots of farms sell them. Then you just Google pigeon food for sale, and it'll be up on the internet. So you can buy them already bagged, pre-bagged, winter food, summer food. You can have breeding food, molting food. We'll talk a bit about that in just a sec. So, or you can mix your own. But I've never done that. I've already bought the pre-bagged. It's just cheap and it's easy and it's already done for you. So that's some typical pigeon food mixes there. And you'll notice the top photograph, you got a few more bits of corn in there. And you got a few more peas, different types of peas or legumes in there. And seeds. At the bottom picture, you've got a lot more barley and wheat and less corn. You got, I think, got sunflower seeds as well, and millet all mixed in there. So we're going to talk about winter food and summer food. So the picture at the top, that is a winter feed. It's a balanced winter feed mix. The picture at the bottom is a balanced summer feed mix. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. That's typical pigeon feed mixes. Corn, that's the yellow corn you just saw in the photographs, or maize, is one of the best types of pigeon feed because it's low in raw cellulose. It's very easily digestible. Pigeons love it. So when I get a bit of sweet corn on my potluck at church, I always refer to it as pigeon food. Pastor Hush doesn't like sweet corn. I don't like sweet corn, and I just never grew up eating it, and I don't like it. So I'll just say, I'll leave the pigeon food, please. And nobody has a clue what I mean. Nobody has a clue what I say. I just say, I'll leave the pigeon food, and I'll leave it at that. So, but it makes good corn, makes good pigeon food. Right. It has the most fat of all the cereals, so it's very fatty. Pigeons like it a lot in any form. Okay. And up to 25 to 30% of the feed can be made up of corn, especially in colder climates. We're going to look at that in a second. Right. So in winter, your pigeon feed is going to have lots of corn, lots of peas, Okay, lots of corn, lots of peas. In summer, your pigeon feed's going to have lots of barley, lots of wheat, lots of seed, because the winter feed is high fat, keeps the pigeons nice and healthy and fat and insulated. Lots of nourishment for the winter. But in the summer, you want to reduce the fat, or your pigeons will get fat, and so you're going to drop the amount of corn. And you literally see your pigeons, if you feed them the wrong feed, you will see them getting big and fat, and that's not good, especially if you're taking it more seriously in racing. So that's winter feed, is less corn, less maize, more seed, more legume. Okay, winter, more corn, lots and lots of corn, and that's your winter feed. So in warm climates, corn's not recommended because of the high fat content. Corn can cause the birds to get fat in the warm climate, but good for corn. So there we go. Now we're going to move on to how the bird flies, looking at the feathers and the wings. So a typical, well, any bird's wing is made up of what's called primary feathers, secondary feathers. There's primaries and secondaries, and then there's the covert feathers, which is the second row of feathers from the trailing edge. How do I explain this for juniors? So you've got the bottom of the wing, and you've got the top of the wing. The top of the wing is called the leading edge, and the bottom of the wing is called the trailing edge. You don't need to know that for your honor. The primaries, or the feathers, at the trailing edge, from the tip right up to the body. The coverts are the middle row. You can see the arrows pointing to the coverts. Okay, and then there's the upper wing coverts. And that's the basic design of a wing. God designed the wing for the primaries to give the thrust. The primaries give thrust in flight, and the secondaries give thrust in flight. Okay, thrust in flight. The coverts protect the primaries and the secondaries because the feather is attached to the ligaments, and the ligaments are attached to the bone. The coverts and the upper coverts are protecting the ligaments and protecting the upper feathers. Okay, but it's the primaries and the secondaries that produce flight. I want to show you another picture, which is an actual picture of a pigeon's wing. So you can see that the primaries on the bottom of the wing, the primaries start from the middle, numbered 1 through to 10. So there's the primaries numbering 1 to 10. And then there's the secondaries from starting from the middle of the wing, moving up to the body from 1 to 11. They are the flight feathers. They're called the flight feathers. And some pigeon fanciers, and I've done this on occasion, you can actually cut the primaries right off. You can actually take a pair of scissors and you cut the primaries at the beginning of the coverts. Cut the primaries, it doesn't hurt them, and it stops the pigeon from flying. But don't worry, the feathers will grow back because every year the pigeon changes all its feathers every year. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. So that's the primaries and the secondaries, and they produce the lift and the flight to the wing. Let's move on. Flight feathers, we're going to just quickly review this. Flight feathers are the long, stiff, asymmetrically shaped, but symmetrically paired feathers on the wings, or the tail of the bird. The tail of the bird as well. Those on the wings are called remiges, singular remix. This is complicated language, but just call them flight feathers, and I'll pass you on the test. Okay, primary flights, secondary flights. While those on the tail are called the rectrices. Okay, their primary function is to aid in the generation of both thrust and lift, thereby enabling flight. And I've got some pictures just to show you. That's a pigeon coming into land, and what it'll do, it'll spread its wings and spread its secondaries and primaries, and then the tail will fan out, especially on landing, and the tail acts as a brake. So the tail is the brake, and you can see that the primaries and the secondary flights are what's producing the lift, and the tail is the brake. But in fast, swift, straight line flight, the picture on the right hand side with the birds at flight, you can see that the tail is swept back, it's tight in, and the wings are flapping fast, up and down, and these pigeons can fly 40 miles an hour. 40 miles an hour. So that's the pigeon in flight, the primaries and the secondary flights. The flight feathers on some birds perform additional functions generally associated with territorial displays, courtship rituals, or feeding methods. In some species, these feathers have developed into long, showy plumes used in visual courtship displays, while others create sound during a display in flight. Okay, I'm going to just skip the rest of this and show you some pictures now. For example, this is, God made these birds do this, but these birds can twist themselves into all different shapes. The bird across the top is one of the bird of paradise birds found in Papua New Guinea. Okay, there are hundreds of different types of birds of paradise. This is a picture from Papua New Guinea, and that one bird can put itself into all those shapes, and it's the wings that are doing it. And you see the ostrich there. The ostrich can't fly, but it's using its feathers to display, to try and attract a female or to warn off a predator. So that the ostrich will use its plumage to warn off predation, something that's trying to kill it, like a cheetah or something, or to attract a female. They're the uses of wings. Now, I've mentioned how the feathers fall out every year. So birds' feathers drop off and new ones grow annually. And that is called the molt, or the molting season. The molting season. And that season is generally late spring and throughout the summer. It's probably between, somewhere between May, could be any time between May and end around about September, October time. So a bird will lose its feathers and its feathers will grow and will grow back again. And when a bird is molting, it's generally a lot more docile, it's more quiet, it's resting, it's just sitting happy. It's not eager to fly because it's conserving its energy to produce new feathers. Okay. So some pictures of some birds molting, pigeons molting. You see the feathers literally dropping out, and you can see the new feathers growing back, coming back through. And every feather on a bird will drop out, including its wing, its primaries, its secondaries, its coverts, everything. And it'll do it pretty quickly, and it'll grow back very quickly as well. So that's molting of a bird, and it's spring through to summer. Right, so this is a bit more about the primaries. I think we've covered that. You've looked at that. Yep. So how does a bird fly? Okay, let me go back one. So when a bird is flying, it's flapping its wings, obviously. It's the primaries that's producing thrust on the primaries that's producing the thrust on the downward stroke, okay? On the downward stroke. Now, on the upstroke, that's when the bird draws its wings back up close to its body. The primaries are separated and rotated. So the bird will actually twist its feathers. So on the downstroke, the primary feathers are going to be flat and they're going to be touching one another. So it's a smooth, constant, aerodynamic surface. But when the bird comes up on the upstroke, bringing the wing back to its body, it will actually move the primaries at 90 degrees. So the air will flow between them. And it's really amazing how God designed this. So the air will flow between them. So on the upstroke, there's hardly any drag whatsoever. And then on the downstroke, it'll move its primaries back to the horizontal position, 90 degrees, back to the horizontal position for the downstroke, which is the thrust stroke. And it's really amazing. And you can see it, if you Google it, you can actually see it in slow motion on some videos on the internet, but I haven't put them up for the sake of time. Secondaries, we've kind of covered all of this. Secondaries are connected to the ulna. In some species, the ligaments that bind these to the bone connect to small rounded projections known as quill knobs on the ulna. In other species, no such knobs exist. Secondary feathers remain close together in flight. They cannot be individually separated like the primaries can to help produce provide lift by creating there. So I've just put these up there to give you a very good idea of the primaries and the secondaries and the use of the tail. The tail is used for maneuvering left and right, and also as a brake as it's coming into land. So there's a dove and there's a pigeon. Because they're looking down, I can tell they're coming in to land, and so the tail is flared and they're getting ready to land. Now, some birds, most birds have at least as many primary feathers as they do secondary flight feathers. But there's some birds, like the albatross. This is a wandering albatross. It's got the widest wingspan of any bird in the world. It's the widest wingspan of it. It's the biggest bird in the world in terms of wingspan. And you can see the secondaries are about 3 times or at least 2 times longer than the primaries. You see, the primaries start from just behind the joint, but the secondaries go way up back to the body. So that's called the wandering albatross. And all that bird has to do is open its wings and it glides on the thermals. Very rarely flaps its wings. That's the wandering albatross. That's just an example of one bird that has more secondary flights than primary flights. Secondaries tend to be shorter and broader than primaries, with blunter ends. They vary in number from 6 in hummingbirds to as many as 40 in some species of albatross. So that's an example there. So that's about molting. At the bottom of your pigeon loft, when you're having molting season, you've got to clean up a lot of feathers. You have to sweep them up. The importance of proper molting. Molting is the process of renewing the feathers. A poor molt results in the bird not having good feathers, which can adversely or negatively impact flight and racing performance. You may want to replace birds that do not have a good molt. If you're racing, you want birds in tip-top condition. And so if a bird is molting, you won't be racing it. You're going to let it rest. And then you're going to race it once the molt's finished. So that's a few points on molting.
Mr. Hash.
Yes, sir.
I think we might have a question from Victor. I see a hand raised there.
Okay.
Yes.
If you can
Victor, if you can type your question, Victor, please. And also, let you know, Pastor, you've got 15 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Any question, guys, please type them on the chat.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. So
there's a question that's come up saying, what's the importance of proper molting?
The importance of proper molting is to keep, so a proper molt is to allow the pigeon to molt stress-free, so that the molt will take place as swiftly as possible. So you're going to give them special feed for molting. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute of a good molting mix, good feed, good rest, plenty water, so that, because it's a vulnerable time, because the pigeon's putting less energy into flying, less energy into life in general, and putting its energy, its vitamins and minerals in producing new feathers. So a swift, small, healthy molt is generally good for the bird's health in general. But if you're stressing the bird, you're forcing it to fly, it's going to become weaker, and it's not going to be in optimum health. And I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Pastor. Yeah, I'm sure it's answered for our Pathfinder that's asked the question.
Yeah. Okay. Pigeons that are not mated around the 1st of December are separated in September. 1st December separated in September because they are no longer chasing hens, laying eggs or feeding youngsters. The molt takes place smoothly and quickly. So you put them to one side, letting them rest, giving them space. You're not stressing them, going in, chasing them around. You're just feeding them, watering them, leaving them. And they'll turn around very quickly. The rest improves the quality of the feathers positively, so a pigeon that is not raised will look better. There we go, there's the answers to the question. Right, feed a mixture designed for molting. High protein, so lots of peas, okay, beans, peas, okay, as a raw material for good feathers comes from the feed. Birds in good health will molt better However, some medications, including dew worms, can reduce the quality of the feathers. Consider the timing of medications. Okay, that's if you're getting seriously into it and you've got hundreds of birds and you get different diseases. You're not cleaning your loft out. You have to clean your loft out regularly. You know, keep them clean, scrape it away, clean the feathers out, keep it dust free. Clean the pigeon loft at least once a week, and you won't get any disease, guaranteed. If you neglect it, you leave it for months, you're going to start encountering problems. It's all about keeping your birds healthy and happy. So that's a good molting feed. You've got, see, at least 2 different types of peas. You've got maize, stroke, corn, and you've got less millet, less barley. Okay, so a lot of protein there. Now, raise at least 2 pairs of pigeons. This is to do with the practical now. So I'll put these pictures in. You don't have to spend big money, and you don't have to build big. You don't have to spend, you know, and go too much into it. This is all you need, for example. And you can make something yourself pretty cheap. Okay, so the pigeon honour requirement, raise at least 2 pairs of pigeons. If homing pigeons, train them to return to their loft from a distance of 25 miles. Okay, so what I used to do, I didn't race. I just used to train them, and I would take them out myself. I would drive half a day, maybe 100 miles, 150 miles, and I would let them go. And they would be sitting on the pigeon loft. They would be sitting on the pigeon loft waiting for me, pulling up, because they were flying in a straight line at 40 miles an hour. And if you're going around and up and down and in and out, they can get back to the loft before you even arrive. Sometimes not. If it's a motorway, if it's a straight motorway run, sometimes not. But if you're on A roads, B roads, guaranteed those pigeons will overtake you. They'll be sitting on top of the loft waiting for you, coming home. And I would train them 25 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. I didn't race it. I didn't want to do anything more than that. And I also kept fancy pigeons. And it talks about fancy pigeons. If you're and so I've got some pictures here of fancy pigeons as well. So look, all you need for a pigeon, basic pigeon hut there, is you've got a little door that can open, let them fly in and out. The pigeons will come out when they want. They will go in when they want, and they will always go in before dark. Pigeons will always fly into their loft or their shed or their coop before dark, and then you can lock them in, keep them safe from predators, and you can let them out when you want. You can keep them locked in all day, especially during the moult. You're letting them rest. So that's some examples of cheap pigeon lofts. Now here's some fancy pigeons. This is what you call a fantail dove. Huge tail like that. It can still fly, but not very efficiently. Okay, that's a fantail dove. It can fly, but not very efficiently. It can probably fly to a rooftop, but it's not going to fly 50 miles. It would struggle because it's been bred like that. And that's called a pouter. Huge long legs. It's almost taller than me. Huge long legs with a huge crop. It's called a pouter. Ugly looking things. I don't know why anybody would want to keep that. For me, it's just so ugly. But people like them, and people would buy them, and people would breed them. There you go. That's a pouter. This is such an ugly bird. I forgot what it's called now. But God, I don't think God made it like that. It's been bred like that. It's like God didn't make a German Shepherd or a Dalmatian. They've been bred like that. So this has been bred like that. God made a pigeon, and man made many different breeds. There's over 800 different breeds of fancy pigeons. These are featherfoots. So you've got a featherfoot dove. They are featherfeet. They don't fly very well because there's lots of drag there. That's a featherfoot. These are called archangels. They've got golden bodies and they've got iridescent green wings and tails. They're called archangels. I've never owned any of these. I've had a featherfoot and I've had a fantail. I didn't like them. I've had a couple of them, and I've never had these archangels. You can pay about £50 for a pair of those archangels. £50 for a pair of archangels. And these are different fancy pigeons. So from the top left, that's called a Jacobin, Jacobite, like a Jacobin. It's like an Elizabethan style thing with a big collar. And then bottom you got a German owl, basically no beak. It's been bred, those things have been bred to have no beak, called a German owl. Top right, I forgot what they are called, but they've got curly feathers on the wings and little tufts behind their neck, and they've got feathers on their feet. I forget what they're called. And then you've got a chicken. They can breed pigeons to look like chickens. You see that one on the bottom right? Looks like a chicken. That's called a Medina. And I used to breed them. I put that there because I used to breed them. And my favorite fancy pigeon is a Medina pigeon. And so I had a Medina that looked just like that. That's not mine. I just took that off the internet. That's called a Medina pigeon. And the aim of a Medina is to have a round body with a head and a tail. Like a spherically round body with a head and a tail. And the round of the body, without any deformation of the circumference of the circle, the round of the body, the more expensive it is, and the more shows you win. Okay, that's called a Medina. And now this is the atypical racing pigeon, and they come in different colours. You've got the grey blues, and then you've got the reds. The russet reds are called mealies, and then you've got the barred blue, you've got the checkered blue, and then you've got the checkered mealy, and you've got the barred mealy. There are different types of different racing pigeons coming in different colours. The most expensive racing pigeon ever sold for £1.4 million. £1.4 million in China. And I think it was 2019 in China. There was 2 Chinese millionaires bidding over the one bird, and it went up to 1.4 million for one bird. And
wow.
the bird will have been bought not to race, the bird will have been bought to breed from. So if that bird has, say, won 20 races, the value goes up. That means it's strong, it's fast, it's fit, it's healthy, and the value, every race it wins, the value goes up and up and up and up and up. And so somebody in China paid 1.4 million for a bird. Now that bird will never race again. It's going to be bought for breeding.
Pastor, what's the life expectancy of these birds?
Depending on how healthy they are, how healthy they're kept, up to 15 years. Yeah, up to 15 years, between 10 and 15 years for a bird. Yeah, and so where can you get a pigeon from if you want a pigeon? Well, you can buy that. You can get pigeons for nothing. If you go onto the internet and go into places like Gumtree, you will always find pigeon fanciers selling off their unwanted stock, maybe some of their unwanted young stock or some of their older breeding stock, and you can get pigeons for free. If a pigeon fancier just wants a quick shift to get rid of 20 birds or 10 birds, and he's advertised them for a few weeks, no one's buying them, he might just say, just give me £1, or you can have them for free. So you can get pigeons. So go on places like Gumtree, these online marketplaces, you'll always find pigeons or dogs for sale in your city or your town. There'll be somebody not far away advertising online. So just put pigeon for sale in your search engine, and you're going to come up with a whole host of adverts for pigeons.
So it's not about going Trafalgar Square and having yourself a pigeon.
I was just going to ask.
There's no more in Trafalgar because they chased them away with some sparrowhawks. But you can't catch them, downtown. You can buy them online. Someone's always selling them locally. And there'll always be pigeon fanciers not far from where you are. And you can get them £5, garden doves for £5, £10, a pair for £10, pair for 15, pair for 20. So they're not very expensive to buy. Same price as a gerbil or a mouse.
Presumably, if you get them from a breeder, then they'll be sort of disease-free rather than picking one up off the street.
Yeah. If you get them from a pigeon fancier, they will be looked after generally, and you can get them for £5, £10, no problem. Doves, pigeons, and all the fancy breeds that tend to be about 20, 30, 40 pounds, maybe 50 pounds each. But yeah, you can barter as well. Pigeons, I've got a few minutes left, haven't I? So pigeons, it's been recorded by the Egyptians and the hieroglyphs and in their carvings that they were using pigeons for pigeon post, 3000 BC. Okay, the ancient Assyrians, the ancient Ninevites, the ancient Babylonians, medieval. They've all figured out pigeons are handy to have because they can send messages. Nobody knows how pigeons navigate. There's different theories how pigeons find their way home. Science hasn't proven anything beyond a doubt, but there's different theories. One is that they use a map and compass technique. They use the sun as a compass, and they use the Earth's magnetic field as the map. And they've learned to memorize where the position of the sun and their magnetic field, the pulse of their magnetic field, where their home loft is. And they will fly using that map and compass technique until they reach the loft. That's a theory, hasn't been proved. Another theory is they use low frequency, they've got an ability to detect low frequency resonance coming from the Earth and everything around them, way down in the low megahertz range, and they can track the megahertz frequency back home. That's never been proved, it's just a theory. So nobody knows, but they've actually took a pigeon, birthed in a shed. It's never even been out. Okay, it's never been out the shed. It's never been out of the aviary, I should say, or the coop. It's never been out of its garden. It's never been flying around in the open. They took that bird. They've taken it 25 miles away. They've let it go. It's found its way back. They don't know how it does it, but the pigeon will find its way back. Medieval times, messenger pigeon would bring back reports from the battlefields, even in World War I, even World War II. Pigeons were used to bring messages back from the battlefield. They would even take pigeons into the bombers, into the Second World War bombers, and if the bombers had a technical problem, they ditched at sea, or the bomber was shot down, forced emergency landing, they would let the pigeon out. The pigeon would have a message attached to its leg in a little container, would let the pigeon go, and the pigeon would fly back to what would be called GCHQ or Bletchley Park or some military base it was from, or the home airfield, and the pigeon would fly back and let them know that the bomber had landed this longitude, that latitude, come and collect them. So scores of men that were actually saved and were picked up and were found during the Second World War because of messenger pigeon. So pigeons have been very useful. Pigeons are used for different things today. I've just got a few notes, just some general interest things. What can pigeons be used for? Well, they can still be used for pigeon post, and still used for pigeon post today. Carrying messages during wartime especially, but also, most often than not, especially in South America, they're used for smuggling. They use pigeons a lot, and they find pigeons being used today, modern day world, for smuggling across borders. They can be smuggling all kinds of drugs, even smuggling things into prisons, like mobile phones, SIM cards, things like that. And yeah, so that's pigeons. Any final questions before we close? We've got a few minutes left.
There's a question about hibernation. Do pigeons hibernate in winter?
No, they don't hibernate. Just during the molt, they'll rest a lot. So there's no hibernation for pigeons. They'll fly all year round. That's fine. But during the molt, they'll be lethargic and rest and want to rest. And pigeons are very friendly and tame. You can, if you've got a pigeon and you can feed it from your hand, it'll come and fly onto your arm, fly on your shoulder. And they can be really fun to have if you have tame pigeons. I don't have any pigeons at the moment, but I'm tempted to get a couple of doves for the back garden, and you can make those doves tame, so you can call them, they'll come and fly to you and land on your hand and peck from your hand.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's what we've got over here. I don't know if we've got any from the Facebook face.
Nothing else there on that side there, Pastor.
All right.
There's a few minutes left. Let me share that the country in Europe that breeds the best racing pigeons are the Belgians. Okay, Belgium. The most expensive racing pigeons come from Belgium. They're serious about racing pigeons over there, over in Belgium. So the people that where I used to live in Quatgrave, just outside Nottingham, that's where I had my 3 lofts. I was very friendly with pigeon fanciers, and they would buy all their expensive birds, like £1,000 a bird, £5,000 a bird. They would ship them over from Belgium and breed from them and get race winners from them. So the Belgians are world renowned for good quality racing pigeons. But you know, there's a cruel side to the sport. Racing pigeon fanciers, generally, there's an animal welfare issue related to that. If you're into it as a money-making racket to win races, to become famous, just by default, you become cruel, because I've seen them, if the birds get too old, they just wring their necks and sell them to the local butcher. You know, if they're no longer useful, they won't advertise them and sell them. They just wring their necks and sell them for £1 each to the local butcher. That's what generally a lot of pigeon fanciers do that are racing. I've seen a different sort of mentality in show pigeons. They'll retire them and keep them. But with racing pigeons, I've seen a lot of cruelty as well. So that's the sinful side of the hobby, if you like. But I know if you're going to have a pigeon, you look after it till death us do part.